morning again, Green Spring. Well, it's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining. The wind is blowing a little bit. And so I hope you get a little bit of sunshine today. For our guest today on Who's Who, we have Chandra Kumar. Now, everybody in Green Spring knows Chandra Kumar because she's our executive director. And she's been our executive director since June of 2016, I think it was. I knew Chandra quite well during her first 6 months here because I was the vice president of the resident council, and we met twice a week with Chandra. And I tell you this because it was my opinion, talking with Chandra one-to-one, every other week for about an hour. It was an experience that I felt that Chandra had our best interest at heart whenever she met the challenges that we have at Green Spring. You know, we have a small city here, and she is running it. So Chandra, thank you very much for agreeing to be on Who's Who today and sharing some of your personal and professional life with us.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, and thank you for your kind words, because I appreciate our interactions, and I learned so much from you on a regular basis, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. We did have a similar experience. I noticed you were president of a homeowners association.
I was, yes. So which can be challenging in its own.
I was president for 5 years of a homeowners association too, and it was so we at least have one thing in common.
One thing in common. Well, we have great kids too.
Yeah, we do.
We do have great
Let's go back to your immediate family. You have 2 children, and
I do.
What do they do?
So my son works with Freddie Mac. He's an analyst there, and he just got a job right out of college. He was an intern there, and they hired him, and he did his internship, and then he did a year's rotation, sort of similar to what we have here, which is an OA position. And then now he's got a permanent job with them. He's in capital markets, stuff that I don't understand. And then my daughter, Pratibha, is a senior project manager with a company in DC that does marketing for like Capital One and Grand Marnier and a couple of those. So she does project
They're
management.
both out of school then?
They are both out. I'm trying to get my daughter to go back and get her master's, and both of them to go back and get their master's. And you know, my husband's been, you know, we ran businesses, and now he's been managing real estate. So that's his new found interest. We're
now you lived for a long time up in Maryland, but I believe you've moved down to Virginia now?
Yes, so I'm about 2 miles from Tyson's Corner, right near in West Falls Church.
Oh, okay.
Which makes my commute to Springfield really great. Door to door, no traffic. So it's been really a nice experience. Getting used to paying taxes on my car, you know, a little bit different things, you know, in Virginia versus Maryland. But otherwise, it's been a really nice experience.
Yeah, I lived in Gaithersburg for 3 years back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Well, what about your parents, and your siblings?
So
you came to the U.S. when you were a 2-year-old baby. Okay.
I was 2 years. So my father came to the United States in 69-ish, 70 to finish his master's, and my uncles had been here. You know, one was teaching, and you know, they both had finished their PhDs here and were teaching. And so, you know, they wanted to bring their younger siblings here also to finish their education. I came with my mom on an airplane. My mom had never been on an airplane before, did not speak English. So I think about the courage it took her to come with a 2-year-old to fly from India, about a 20-hour flight.
And where did you live in India? We
lived in Bihar, which is a state in the northern part of India near Nepal. So we border Nepal. We're about 3 hours from the mountains there. It's a beautiful
So you couldn't see the Himalayas from?
No, unfortunately you couldn't. You had to drive a bit, but it's, you know, it's an amazing area. It's so lush and so green, and you know, my grandfather was a farmer, so we had, you know, that's where we grew up. All of his sons went out to get their education. So, you know, all of my uncles are here except for one that remains still in India. You know, and he manages the family. You know,
he manages the family farm.
Farm there, yes. And so.
And that's where you go when you leave here and go back to India?
I do. Love to take my kids back. I love them to know where we come from, to get an understanding of what life is like, because I think it gives them a better appreciation of what we're blessed with here. And they really enjoy that time. And I love that they don't complain about anything. They enjoy they go with the flow, and that's what I wanted them to have. And that's how we were brought up. My parents took us back on a regular basis, and we were expected to live like everyone else. And that we weren't, because we were from America, and get special perks, even though that does happen.
I'm sure.
It does happen. So then, after I came here and I was 2 years old, then my siblings are much younger than I am. I have three siblings. My
How much younger?
So my second sister, Anu, is 10 years younger than I am, and she has two little ones. And then the next one is 13 years younger than I am, Anju. And the final one that just got married, and that's whose wedding I was attending, finished her residency and is an anesthesiologist, specializing in pain. And she's 15 years younger than I am. So they're like my little kids. They're my first set of kids.
Yeah.
They're my first set of kids. I get a Mother's Day
So
card
you were a
from them.
second mom for them.
I am their second. I still discipline them too. That little
is that
finger
right?
comes out. Even at this age, I still tell them what to do when they need it. So, but it's been it's such a blessing. I always tell people my parents are very generous, but the biggest gift they could give me was my three siblings. Really are my foundation, and they've helped me raise my kids when I was in
Sure.
working, and and so it's been a really nice relationship. I have a large family. Most of my family lives in Montgomery County and Fairfax County, McLean, Great Falls area. So I've been lucky to have people right around that Potomac Bridge back and forth, and so.
Well, it's all in the area.
It's all in the area. So when we get together, it's about 60 to 70 people when we have a get together.
Is that right?
Yeah.
With all the uncles,
with the
so
uncles,
we're getting
and then
all their siblings, all their kids,
and all my cousins,
their kids,
and their kids, and
Yeah.
so it's really nice for us. You don't feel like you're not surrounded by family, which has been wonderful.
I assume that you don't get together. You get together once a year, twice a year.
Oh no, we used to do it almost every other weekend before, and if you
70 of you?
Well, maybe about 30 to 40 of them
okay,
sometimes.
okay.
But now it's kind of slowed down because everybody's got their own kind of lives and smaller family units. But just for my sister's wedding, we were all together for the past 4 days
Sure.
straight. So it's just a lot of fun to have.
All right. Well, since your folks are from India and they came here, you were only 2 years old. You grew up in the American culture, in the schools and so forth, and your folks, I would assume, I'm sure they still have the Indian culture because that's what they grew up with.
Right.
They're going to change somewhat maybe, but how do you balance that? It's an assimilation, I guess, and it continues through you and your kids on down. Huh?
It does, and it's interesting because I had my cousins were here that were older than I was, and so, we do all the Indian traditional festivals, and we wear Indian clothes, and most of the time at home, my mom cooked Indian food. But as I got older, I think we started to add some more of the, kind of the American Western culture piece of like getting a Christmas tree, things like that. But my uncle, who had been here before, his wife, the one that he used to teach at Mount St. Mary's College, and he was the head of the department there in economics, and his wife started the tradition of Thanksgiving. So she started to make turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes, and I love that so much. The 10 years she did it, and when I got older, she had only 20 years, she probably did it, then I started to do it because she was like too much for her.
So that's one of your traditions.
So then that's one of my traditions. So we do both Indian food and traditional Thanksgiving food. But again, it's the tradition of giving thanks. So when we get together, I always make everybody, all 70 of them, 60 or 70, depending on what year it is, tell us what they're thankful for.
Oh, good.
So we go around.
At that time this evening.
Yes, yeah, it is. And they all go around and say a few words about what they're thankful for. And it's just an opportunity to get together. Yeah. I think the balancing of the two cultures, I think my parents stressed that, most important part of both cultures is, your integrity, your work ethic, the kind of person you are, which is fundamental to both of the cultures. But I think I kind of was able to swing back and forth. When I was at school, I was very much, Western culture. When I'm at home with my mom and dad, we would actually speak Hindi, which is the official language of India, to my mom at the dinner table, and my dad in English, because for 10 years I was an only child, and so I would communicate at the dining table with both of them.
Both languages.
Both languages.
Well,
And,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and it just kind of, even now, it still kind of comes naturally.
Was that intentional on their part?
No, it was just me. I was more comfortable
But I
speaking
mean, your
English.
dad spoke English and your mother spoke Hindi. Your dad could have also spoken Hindi.
Right. I'm not sure why it happened that way, to be honest with you.
My guess is they wanted you to be able to handle both languages.
Maybe. It was interesting because all of my cousins, there were 6 of them, all spoke English. So all of us cousins spoke English. All of the uncles and aunts and relatives, we spoke Hindi. And then when my grandparents came to visit, then we spoke a dialect which is typical to our village, which I know little bits and pieces of. But
well, in the area you live here in the area. At the time you were growing up in the late 20th century, did you have many Indian families, other Indian families that you associated with, or were you all pretty much an integral?
So the interesting thing for us is because of my father's business, as he was finishing his master's, decided to open a business. And he was one of the first Indian grocery store owners, wholesale and retail, on the East Coast. And so we met lots of Indian families. And so there are a couple of them that we're still, have become part of our kind of core.
They live around here.
They live around here, but mostly it's just our family. I mean, we've got a lot of friends that we have. We have a lot of acquaintances. I learned a lot about Indian culture because of the store, because the people come from different parts of India. And so their food, their language, their dialect was different. But we have a pretty strong core of friends in the area. But our family was so big that we almost didn't need to have more friends. We do, we have lots of them, but when we have a wedding, you have about 500 people come to a wedding. So it is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
But it's been nice because we now have people that are married into our family that are from different cultures. Like my cousin's wife is Korean. My brother-in-law is Irish American, half Irish-American, half Mexican. So it's like we've got a mix.
So you do have.
We've got a mix of them, and it's interesting how they have assimilated into some of those cultures that we have, culture norms that we have, and it's kind of back and forth. It's just really being, I think, respectful is the main thing.
I agree with you.
So it's the main thing, and I think I was telling you when I went to school, I was probably the only one that was of color, and I had a friend, Valerie, who was African American. But it never dawned on me till the school systems started to adjust, and then I thought, oh my goodness, there's other Indian people. I had never known that there were other Indian people in the school system, or that there were other people from, different parts of the world, because of the suburbs that I grew up in. So it was a little bit different.
Well, did you have any problems in school because of the?
I was very lucky. I have to tell you, I was very lucky, and I have to say, part of it had to be is that I flex where I need to flex. So if I needed to, I had friends that were, liked to listen to rock music. I had friends that liked to listen to pop music. So I mean, it was like.
How about country music?
Yes, that too.
Oh, good.
I had lots of, my best friend, Jennifer Yoakley, that was her thing. She loved country music.
Good for her.
So for me, it was really just finding people that were good people and that I got along with and they got along with. And, I was lucky to grow up in a very
so you enjoyed
eclectic
school.
area. I did.
Yeah.
I had a very.
Both elementary and high school?
Elementary and high school. High school was much more integrated. By the time I got to high school, there was lots of people from all over. It was interesting because my clique of friends were mostly from all over the world. I had a nice mix of people, which I was fortunate to be blessed with, that I still get to keep in contact with. So.
Well, what about college?
Oh, so college was a whirlwind because I got married when I was 19, so I was only a couple of years into college.
So you were sophomore? Or?
Yes. I was at the University of Maryland, and a lot of my high school friends went to the University of Maryland also. Yeah. So that same kind of elementary to middle school to high school, we were all friends. And then I got really busy. Once you get married and you have a child and then I opened a business while I was still in college.
You opened a business in college?
I did.
What kind of business?
Well, that comes from being a daughter of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so I was collecting my dad's rent checks from his houses when I was like 15. So that sort of just kind of came naturally to me. I had a fragrance store. My brother-in-law my cousin's husband had like 4 or 5 of them in different malls, and And my uncle had one. He said, why don't you just open it for Christmas? It does well. You make some money. And I thought, oh, okay. It did so well, we ended up
Now, by
keeping
fragrance store, you mean perfumes,
name brand
candles,
perfumes. No, just all name brand perfumes,
Just
lotions,
perfumes.
things like that,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And then I branched out to another one in another mall, and then I had, for the holidays, I opened up for Valentine's Day a balloon store, and I had a flower and balloon store, and
And this is while you're in college?
while I was in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you really were an entrepreneur.
I was,
Man.
and then I found what I really love to do, which is working in senior care, and so I was like, my husband managed that part of it, and I went back to doing what was my real passion.
Well, is your store still operating?
Actually, no, we've sold one of them, and the other ones we closed over the years because life got just too hectic.
Yeah.
And then we got to focus on our we have a beer and wine grocery store retail. That's what we ran for the longest period of time. So he ran it, I didn't.
Yeah.
I was busy with my job.
Well, what kind of job did you have when you graduated from college?
So I ended up going to doing an administrator in training, which is called an AIT, and that's how you become a nursing home administrator. I took a class in college, and my professor was like, you would make a great nursing home administrator, and I had never been in a nursing home.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a gerontology class, and I took it. And
Now, your BS was in accounting, though.
yes, I have a degree in accounting, but I had a
Okay.
minor in gerontology. Gerontology, which is the study of the elderly. So
Okay.
the University of Maryland had only a few classes, so I couldn't do a major in it.
Yeah.
I loved my business classes, but I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't want to be behind a desk all my life, and so I thought this is something, this opens up a different
okay. realm
realm for me and something that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed, taking care of my grandparents and that piece of it, and so that's how I ended up, going into gerontology. I did my AIT. And then I did admissions and marketing director, was my first official job after finishing everything, after finishing my administrator license. And then I became an AL manager. So
A what?
I became an assisted living manager,
Okay.
yeah. So I did that, and then went on to be a nursing home administrator, and then.
Well, now you were working with which?
So I worked with Marriott Senior Living Services, which was at that time one of the largest providers of senior services.
Now, Marriott built the Fairfax.
Yes, sir.
And I remember I attended their luncheons. There were several of them, and I was very likely to go there. But Marriott built them. But they sold to Sunrise? Or
Yes, they sold us to Sunrise.
Everything?
Everything, all 100 properties.
Yeah. All 100? They owned 100 properties?
Well, right, they had contracts on 100 of them, and they owned some of them. And, it wasn't at my pay grade to know all the details of it, but approximately
I understand
100
that.
of those transitioned.
Oh. And so they got out of the...
They got out of the business.
Okay.
They got out of the business. It was.
I didn't understand that. That they completely got out of it. I thought that was an isolated one.
Oh, no, they got out of all of it all at one time, and Sunrise took us over. And so I worked with Sunrise for a couple of years.
Well, Marriott had a good, I thought they had a good plan for the CCRC.
They did, but none of the
But they're
CCRs.
small.
They're very small.
Yeah.
Most of them that I worked at none of them were more than 300 apartments or 300 people residing in a CCRC. And they were pretty big considering the other communities.
Oh, is that right?
CCRCs has been predominantly where I've worked. So I understand the flow of how, it's a matrix system versus running your own freestanding community. Erickson happens to be, the largest, and I love the fact that we're able to provide services that I couldn't at like a Marriott or a Sunrise because of our scale and size.
And you were at Friend's house. Was that a very small?
Oh, so Friend's house was interesting because.
Was that your first one?
No, CCRC?
Yeah.
Oh, no, the first one I was at was Bedford Court as the assisted living manager. And then I was at Maplewood Park Place, which was at that time Marriott's crown jewel. It was their highest end product in downtown Bethesda. And so I was the administrator there for about, on about 5 years.
Now the administrator's equivalent to the executive director?
No, sir. It's it's second in command, but it really running the nursing home and assisted living and memory care.
Okay.
Marriott's didn't at that point have an associate executive director, so I used to help out with that, but mostly it was running the nursing home.
Okay.
I went to Friend's house because it was around the corner from where I lived. I had been out of the business for about 4 years, thought I was going to be a great at-home mom, and then realized I wasn't good at it. I was getting bored.
Oh,
There wasn't enough for me to do, so I went back to work. And this is the first time I did low to moderate income housing. So Friends House is a not-for-profit low to moderate income housing, CCRC, in Sandy Spring, Maryland, which is literally door to door 3 minutes from my house. So it was a completely different experience, but I loved what I do, and I was able to have a great team there. So, you know, I've done high end, middle of the road, and I've done, you know, low to moderate income also. So a little bit of everything.
well, now, how did you get into Erickson Living?
So Erickson is interesting because I was at the Erickson School.
Now, this was when, oh, you attended the school before you?
Yes,
came?
I was not a part of Erickson when I attended the school.
Oh.
I was at Friends House, and I wanted to go back and get my master's, and I have a master's in management of aging services.
Well, now, tell me, Erickson has a school within the University of Maryland, is that the way?
In the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
County.
It's not Erickson Living.
Oh.
It was, if
John
I'm not
Erickson?
mistaken, John Erickson gave some sort of an endowment for that school. So it's separate, but it has the same Erickson name.
Okay, so John Erickson gave an endowment for the school, and it has nothing to do with Erickson Living.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's still ties in the sense of, you know, we have people that teach.
The name has some,
yes, yes.
But you were able to attend that school. How big is it?
Oh, we only had, I had 21 people in my cohort at that point in the master's program.
Yeah.
It's a cohort system, so they have like 20 to 25 people per class. Now they've expanded it to undergraduate too. I'm not sure how large that is, but this was the graduate program, and we were the fifth class that had ever been through that.
And that was when?
And that was, no, jeepers, it's been 7 years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago. I'm losing my...
2012, 2011?
Yeah. Yeah, because I started with Erickson in the 2014. I finished a little bit before I started with Erickson.
Okay.
And that's where I just met some great people from Erickson that were attending. Jean Landerville, who was the executive director here, was one of my
just
peers.
Before Ben.
Yes, she was one of my peers there, and she kept talking about how wonderful Erickson was. And I thought, oh my gosh, all these people are so smart, and I really like them. I thought, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? And she said, Chandra, try it. And I said, but you know, I run little communities. Why would they want to give me a job to work as an associate executive director in a big community? And she was like, Chandra, I think you should interview. And so I interviewed after 19 interviews, and that's not 19 separate people, there were groups.
That was for one job.
That was for one job.
19 interviews
19.
for one job.
That was for my associate executive director job at Riderwood.
Riderwood, okay.
There are lots of thank you cards. I had to write lots of thank you cards to all those people. And I got to meet great people. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. And so Riderwood was the first time that I had such a large community. And
the largest in the country.
We're the largest in the country.
Yeah.
And so when we do new employee orientation, I always talk about that.
Yeah.
What other company would take a chance on somebody coming from a 200 unit CCRC to a 2,500 unit CCRC? And even though I'm the associate, that's a big leap.
Yeah,
And
sure
then
is.
within 2 years to be the executive director at Greenspring, you know, I have been very blessed to be surrounded by great people.
The viewpoint of running you've got similar problems in any CCRC.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I've looked at Greenspring, for example. I mean, people look at us and we're large. We're large, but we're not really large because we're segmented. We have our hubs, and that's about 500 in each hub. And then we have our buildings, and we have our floors. And so we really get down to a small group of people. We have our tables
Neighborhoods,
for dinner.
tables, yes.
And but what the advantage is we have so many different services.
Exactly.
So many more than the others can afford to have.
Absolutely,
For example, this studio.
Yes.
How many other CCRCs around the country have a studio like this?
Not that I'm aware of that. The amenities that we have here, whether it's the studio, whether it's the social workers or resident service coordinators, whether it's the medical center.
Yeah.
We wanted it so much so when I was at Maplewood Park Place, high end, you can imagine Bethesda, price point, downtown Bethesda. But because of the size, we could never afford to have a permanent physician there
Oh.
or a permanent social worker, and so we used to have to, for independent living. We did have a social worker for
And
nursing.
so that was high-end, and how
Yeah.
big, about 200?
I think it's about 250.
250?
So you just couldn't you couldn't get all of the services that you
Yeah.
get here.
I guess we don't, we live here, and we don't really appreciate, I guess, the fact that we have these services. It's all available to us, immediately available, and it's because of our size.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Economies of scale gives us a lot. And I also think that, John Erickson's vision of creating, these amenity spaces and how it enhances people's lives, I think is important too, to acknowledge, to have a bank, to have a pharmacy, to have those pieces. A lot of them have small snippets of it,
Yeah.
but to have all of that encompassing in one place is rare.
Yeah,
Is rare.
I would think
yeah.
so.
And we are a little city.
We are in a little city.
My son said it to me best. We got on a cruise ship, and the first cruise I've ever been on had 2,000 people on it. And I said, I want to go take a tour of the, they have a cruise tour that you can take. And he's like, well, why, Mom? You are on a cruise ship too. I'm like,
All the time.
What do you mean? And he goes, well, think about it. You have all of these amenities. You've got 2,000 residents there too. And I thought, I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah.
But it takes a youngster to tell you what you're
Well,
thinking.
we think of it that way. A lot of us call it we were on a cruise ship. We look at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I learned something from him all the time
Yeah.
too. So.
And I think because of our medical, because of our meals every day, because of our socialization, because we have things to do and opportunities. My guess is it adds 4 or 5 years to our life if we come in when we're healthy and still vibrant and still doing things. I feel that that's probably the case. I don't know. Do you?
I think you're probably right.
Do you have something like that in your studies of
I think
these kind of CCRCs?
So statistically speaking, if you do have the socialization and you do have the meals, and you have a sense of safety and security, that does add.
Yeah.
That does add to your longevity, and the availability of the medical services when are needed. Yeah. And most of our residents have had good health insurance, have had good jobs. So that is also part of that equation that is very, very helpful.
Well, we have 1 minute left.
Well, I just want to say thank you.
But so, is there something that you would like to say that sort of wrap up your life or your?
I have to say that to wrap up my life, I am very, very lucky and very blessed. Even little challenges like this, I look at it as. Oh, and my sister's wedding reception, everybody, in my motherly fashion, getting everybody into Uber cars, and then I'm one of the last ones to go, and by accident, somebody must have stepped on the back of my shoe. I took a tumble. Interesting enough, her reception had 60% doctors there, so I didn't really have to worry. And so they did a little neuro check and said, Chandra, were you drinking? I was like, I was the only one not drinking at the party.
So you broke a toe?
So I broke a toe, I hurt the rotator cuff and the ribs, and so I try not to laugh too hard because the ribs hurt a little bit when I laugh.
Okay.
But I just have to say I'm just very grateful. I'm grateful to be here at Green Spring, grateful for the love that I get from my residents and my staff. I couldn't ask for more. I've got a wonderful family. I'm just happy.
We're delighted to have you because, as I said at the beginning, I think you have our interest at heart when you make decisions and I think you try to consider our feelings and so forth, and I appreciate that. And I've been delighted. It's been a delight to talk with you this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate
it very much.
Thank you so much.
So